I had to read the very next day. So make sure we are recording here. And I'm going to keep this up so I can see if other people arrive. But welcome. And one more thing I wanted to do real quick is to make myself smaller so you can see the screen. All righty. So I think we should be good here. Oops. All righty. So this is the Menno Belly. Oh, we got somebody else. Um, where do we go here? Okay. Hi, Sharon. Oh, we just lost somebody else. Shoot. I don't know where she went. Gotta love these things. Anyways, I'm glad you're here, and I already hit record because I was just saying last time I did one of these, I forgot to hit record and I had to redo it all talking to myself the very next day so I could record it. Anyways, so here we are, and hopefully she'll come back. I was also saying how this is my first time doing it at 6 p.m., and I'm wondering if that's not a great time for
Mm,
everybody. So,
hmm
but I'm happy to see you. All right. So, if you don't know me, if you're watching this on the replay, you are in the right place. If you are 35 and over and you're just dealing with some stubborn body issues that just are not, your body's not acting the way that you would like it to act. So, we are going to help you with that today for sure. Now, here are some quotes that I have heard from women over the years, and some of these might sound familiar to you. Um, One woman told me that she's eating the same and exercising, but her stomach, it feels like someone inflated a balloon in there. Another woman told me that her jeans fit everywhere except around her middle. So if you've ever gone to put your jeans on after a long summer of not wearing jeans and had no problem pulling them up over your legs and your booty, and all of a sudden when you went to go button that top button, you weren't able to do it, you're not
hmm
alone. Another woman said she feels like her belly is puffed up and like she's always bloated, or even that she kind of looks pregnant. And then a fourth woman told me that it's like her body hit a switch and all of the fat went straight to her stomach. And that's the one that I probably hear the most reiterations of is all of a sudden my stomach used to be flat, or I would carry my weight in my hips and my thighs, and then out of nowhere my stomach got big. And this is actually a real thing. So menobelly is a newer word that's been thrown out there lately. Now that women are finally talking about menopause more, we start talking about the menobelly, and it really is a thing. And you're not alone if you feel like you have that menobelly. So the thing about the weight gain, it's not really just weight gain. It's actually a shift in your body composition. So what ends up happening is as we age, we are losing muscle, and I'll go into that a little bit in more in depth in the next slide. But as we lose muscle, we are gaining fat, and that fat actually shifts to our belly. And I personally always say that the scale isn't the full story. When you step on the scale, it literally just tells you how much gravity is pulling down on you. It's not telling you anything about how much fat you have, how much muscle you have, how much your bones weigh, how much your organs weigh. It's just telling you your total weight. And the thing with this, with the menobelly, is that your weight might stay stable. The weight might not actually change, but you start noticing your clothes fitting differently and you start noticing the weight moving to a different place. So what's typically happening there is you might be, say, losing 5 pounds of muscle, but then you're gaining 5 pounds of fat. So the scale is going to be the same. -5 plus 5 brings you right back to where you started from. However, fat takes up a lot more space in your body than muscle does. So if you're gaining fat and losing muscle, you're going to feel like your clothes are fitting differently, like you are feeling bigger in certain areas, oftentimes in the belly area. So there are actually two types of belly fat that occur in our bodies. So one of them is a little bit easier to deal with, and one of them is a little bit more challenging to deal with, and it's actually a lot more harmful to us. So the subcutaneous fat, okay, is the fat that we've probably been dealing with for most of our lives. It's that pinchable fat on the top layer, right underneath your skin. It's kind of when you feel soft. A lot of times people, when they have subcutaneous belly fat, they describe it as the muffin top. So subcutaneous fat is actually the fat that we would prefer. It's easier to lose subcutaneous fat, and it is not as harmful to our health. Visceral fat, on the other hand, is the fat that is deep around your organs, right? And this is the type of fat where if you've ever noticed that your belly feels big, but it feels hard, doesn't feel soft like maybe it did in the past, that's a good chance that it's more visceral fat. It's also incredibly inflammatory, and inflammation in the body can cause a lot of issues. And so there are a lot of health risks that come from this visceral fat. And we do, as we age, as we go through the menopausal change, we do end up getting more visceral fat. And so, as we go through the presentation today, much of what I am going to be sharing with you, the tips on how to get rid of belly fat, will work for both types. But there are certain tips that I'll give that are more specific to the visceral fat that we really, really want to get rid of um, in order to improve our health. So this really isn't just about the way we look. Okay, it's not just vanity. It's about keeping ourselves healthy, getting the inflammation down, and lowering the health risks that come with the visceral fat. So some of the health risks that are associated with this visceral fat around your organs are heart disease, type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, high blood pressure, and also certain cancers. And many of those are the top causes of death in people in the United States and around the world, honestly. And so visceral fat really is something that we want to ensure that we take care of so that we can get rid of these health risks and lower the inflammation in our bodies, which is causing these health risks. So, how common is belly fat? Well, 65% of women between the ages of 40 and 60 have belly fat. And almost 75% of women 60 and over have belly fat. So that's 3 out of every 4 women. Now, the menopause transition, you can see that based on these ages that are listed here, once we hit menopause, we do end up gaining more belly weight. And I actually should have researched what percent of women say, 20 to 40 have belly fat because it's probably quite a bit lower because that menopause transition does cause us to gain more belly fat. And so menopause is, there's a lot of terms that are kind of thrown around out there. So you hear perimenopause, you hear menopause. Some people say they're in menopause, some people say they're in perimenopause. So what menopause actually is 12 months of not having a period. So once you have gone 12 months without having a period, you are officially in menopause. That time period beforehand is perimenopause. And that time period can last for quite a while for some people. On average, it lasts about 7 years. So the average weight gain through that menopause transition, which could also be called perimenopause, is about 3 pounds per year or 22 pounds total. So that is quite a big jump in weight. And a lot of it is biological. Okay. And as I mentioned earlier, visceral fat is one of those things that occur that increase more during menopause. Right. So it actually doubles throughout that menopause transition, um, which is why a lot of people end up with a lot of health risk factors as they age. And I should have said this earlier, but if you have any questions as I am going through these, please feel free to drop them in the chat and I will answer all those questions as we get to the end. I want to make sure I am cognizant of your time, and so I'll get through the slides and then I will answer your questions. So if anything pops up as we are kind of going through these slides, drop it in the chat and I will answer it later. All right. So this fat redistribution. Again, it is biology. It is not a failure on anything that you have done or haven't done. What happens as we enter that menopause transition period, our estrogen levels drop, which actually causes fat to move from our hips and our thighs to our belly. Okay. So if you had a pear shape before, maybe you carried your fat in your upper body or in your hips and your thighs, and you're starting to notice that you're looking a little bit more like that apple shape, that is biology. That is what our bodies are meant to do due to the changes in hormones. And then the other hormone that plays a role in this is testosterone. So men are not the only ones that have testosterone. We do as well. And as our testosterone increases, that also leads to more belly fat storage. So it's kind of like a double whammy here. Estrogen dropping, testosterone rising, and both of those lead to increased belly fat. Right? So thinking about your own body over the last few years, okay? Have you noticed any of these things happening to you? Okay? Have you noticed that redistribution of fat? Where you notice that pants maybe are tighter in certain areas but looser in others.
Yes.
Yep, yep, you aren't the only one. And it can be kind of a weird feeling when, again, change of seasons, when you go to put on some clothes that you haven't worn in a few months, and last time you wore them, they fit perfectly fine. And now all of a sudden, just not feeling the same. You're not feeling good in those clothes anymore. So there is nothing that you personally did in those months. It's just what happens as we age and our hormones change. However, it doesn't mean we have to accept it, which is why I am doing this presentation. So a couple of other things that happen as we age. So, with the loss of estrogen and in perimenopause, our estrogen is kind of going up and down and all over the place. And then once we hit menopause, then the estrogen stays steady, but it's low. Okay. So, if you're in perimenopause, you may notice these things happening at times, but not at other times, right? And that's because your estrogen levels are kind of out of whack all over the place. So what one other thing that happens with less estrogen is that we get a drop in leptin. And so there's two hunger hormones, we'll call them. Leptin is a hormone that makes you feel satiated. Okay. So we want more leptin in our bodies because it causes us to feel full. Okay. And it allows us to control our appetites more. But when we have less estrogen, we also have less leptin, which means we have less appetite control. We have a lot more cravings. So if there are periods throughout your days where you are just dying with cravings for everything, the good chance that your estrogen has dipped, which has dropped your leptin. Okay. The other hunger hormone is ghrelin. And this hormone we want less of. And unfortunately, we get more of it. Ghrelin causes us to feel hungry. And this is especially true if our sleep is disrupted. So, sleep is actually a big part of weight loss. When we're not getting quality sleep, we end up having more cravings because we have more ghrelin, more of that hunger hormone in our bodies. Okay. And then the third thing that is happening is that we are losing muscle, which causes our metabolism to slow down, which means we are burning fewer calories. So, and I think I have this on the next. Let me just make sure. I don't, yes, okay, I do have it here. So, the loss of muscle as we age is a huge factor in how our bodies change, and it's a huge factor in how men's bodies change too. So this part happens to both of
Oh,
us.
sorry.
Um, Starting at the age of 30, we are losing quite a large percentage of our muscle mass per decade, 3 to 8%. As we lose muscle, we burn fewer calories. Muscle is more metabolically active than fat is, which means muscle is burning more calories while we're resting, while we're sleeping. The more muscle we have on our bodies, the more muscle or the more calories we are burning, the faster our metabolism is. Okay. The more food you can eat and still be in a calorie deficit, which is why muscle is so important. Muscle also helps to prevent fat gain. Okay. So, in order to preserve our muscle, that you know, or to counteract that age-related muscle loss, and it's called sarcopenia, happens to everybody, is by strength training. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we want to, at least, at the very least, we want to stop our bodies from losing more muscle. So we want to maintain the muscle that we have on our bodies right now at the very least. Ideally, we would want to build more muscle, add muscle to our bodies for many, many reasons, but in this case, for increasing our metabolism and allowing us to burn more calories all day long, no matter what we are doing, even if it's just laying on the couch and watching Netflix. Okay, so if you've watched any of my videos, if you've seen any of my content, you know I harp on strength training and why it's so important. And I will talk a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes here. Okay. So the other thing that happens during the menopause transition is that our fat cells actually change. Our fat cells actually get bigger, and that in turn causes them to create even more inflammation in our bodies and then causes them to trigger insulin resistance. And insulin resistance is kind of a precursor to type 2 diabetes. So there's a lot that can kind of go wrong if our bodies are struggling to use insulin. Okay, weight gain just being one of the many things. So that's why, as we age, that whole calories in, calories out thing doesn't work quite as well. I know I wrote fail here. I don't want to say it fails, but it's not the only factor that determines whether or not we're losing weight or we're losing belly fat. Um, in our 20s, yes, absolutely. You could, you know, work out a little bit harder than you typically do, and you end up losing weight, right? Or you can cut your calories by just a little bit, just reduce a portion size, at breakfast, and you lose weight. That doesn't work so well as we get older because of these biological changes like the fat cells changing, getting bigger, and creating more inflammation in our bodies. So you're probably wondering what actually works. What can I do to combat this increase of belly fat, especially the increase of visceral fat? So, like I said earlier, all of these five things will help with both subcutaneous and visceral fat, but you absolutely want to focus on these five things if you want to get rid of the visceral fat. There's other things you could do. You don't necessarily have to do all five of these things to help you rid yourself of subcutaneous fat. But you do for that stubborn visceral fat that has accumulated or might start accumulating soon, depending on what age you are. So, the five top things to focus on is to lift weights, eat protein, focus on fiber, prioritize your sleep, and manage your stress. And if you're able to focus on these five items, you will see a change in your menobelly. You will see that menobelly decreasing, and it's not going to be a quick fix. This is kind of we're playing the long game here. But if you stay consistent with these five things, you will be able to reduce that menobelly that you're struggling with. So let's talk about each of them. Let's talk about strength training first, since it's my favorite. Um, some of you might already be lifting weights and loving it, or some of you may be lifting weights and absolutely hating it, but doing it because you know it's important. Others may feel intimidated by it. If you've never lifted weights before, walking into a gym can be incredibly intimidating. Even for myself, when I join a new gym, I am nervous about walking into that gym and into the weight area, and using those machines, right? Or using the dumbbells or the barbells. It's scary, especially because there's usually a lot of really buff men walking around and grunting and doing weird things. And yeah. Luckily, we are seeing more and more women in the weight room with those men, but it can be an intimidating thing. So if you are feeling intimidated by it, I totally get it. And it's absolutely fine to work out from home too. You don't necessarily have to belong to a gym and have tons of equipment in order to participate in strength training workouts. So the benefits of strength training is number one, it builds muscle. So it's going to counteract that sarcopenia. It's also going to reduce your visceral fat. Okay. Hormones get activated as we are exercising. And I mean, our bodies are incredibly amazing pieces of art really that machines I guess too that they know that if we do certain activities it can improve our health in many ways, and one of the ways strength training can do so is by reducing your visceral fat. It also reduces your subcutaneous fat, so that will help you look more toned. You'll be able to see more definition in your muscles if you're reducing the subcutaneous fat. Reducing visceral fat, you may not notice those changes right away, and they're mostly going to be just in the belly area, right? But over time, as you lift weights, you will be reducing visceral fat, which will allow that belly to flatten out, become a little bit smaller. And it is absolutely more effective at these things than cardio only. Cardio is necessary too, but cardio does not help us lose weight. Okay. Cardio is for our health, for our hearts and our health, and our lungs mostly, right? And so to keep our heart healthy, to keep our lungs healthy, we need to do cardio exercise. But that is not going to help us lose weight. It's not going to help us flatten out or shrink our bellies at all. And one of the main things to keep in mind with strength training is that following something called progressive overload, which I will explain in just a second here, and having a plan are absolutely key. So, doing random YouTube videos where you're lifting weights is not going to get you the results that you want. And also going to random group fitness classes and lifting some dumbbells in a group fitness class. For years, as a former group fitness instructor, I thought that was strength training. And then I wondered, like, well, why aren't I getting any muscle? Why aren't I looking more toned? Um, so those types of exercises where you're, doing some bicep curls and squats and things like that in a group exercise class, that is not strength training. That is working more on you're still working on your muscles, but more on your muscular endurance rather than muscular strength. So with true strength training, it's more about increasing how much you're doing each workout. And that's what progressive overload is. So in order to build muscle, we need to damage the muscle first. So if you're lifting, 2 pound dumbbells and doing some bicep curls, that's not going to damage your muscles. Lifting, maybe 10-pound dumbbells and maybe only doing, 6, 7 repetitions of that, that is going to damage your muscles. And once our muscles are damaged, we then give them a chance to recover. And while they're recovering, they go in there and they repair those little microscopic tears that occur. And that's how we build muscle. So strength training is, for most people, a lot more boring than focusing on like cardio or doing a group fitness class and what have you. And it's a lot slower paced, and you're not, sweating as much. You're not getting your heart rate up as much as you would in one of those other activities, but it is the best form of exercise you can do if you, number one, want to get rid of your belly, and number two, lose weight. Strength training will help you lose weight a lot more effectively than just cardio. Okay. So, having a plan and practicing progressive overload is necessary in order to be doing true strength training. All right, so next is protein. And protein has been another big buzzword lately. I know it's all over my, social media as I'm scrolling through. And it's not a fad. Um, focusing on protein is not something that's going to go away. So it's not, going to be like the low fat diets of the 90s, or the, slim fast shakes, fads. Protein is so beneficial in so many ways, and it matters a lot more than you might think. Now, I personally never ate a whole lot of protein, and didn't realize how important it was until maybe, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I started focusing more on protein, and it made such a difference. So, number one, protein preserves our muscle. Okay, protein is a building block of muscle. So, in order for our strength workouts to be efficient and successful, we do need to fuel our bodies with protein in order to build more muscle. Protein also boosts our metabolism. So there are four parts to our metabolism. One of them is called the thermic effect of food. And essentially, that is how many calories your body burns digesting the food that you are eating. And protein takes a lot longer to digest than fats or carbohydrates. So our bodies actually burn more calories digesting protein than they do the other two macronutrients. Okay, so the more protein you eat, it's not like a huge number, but every little bit helps in boosting our metabolism and burning more calories throughout the day. So we do burn more calories digesting protein, and protein also helps to maintain our energy. So another huge um, issue that I hear from women is that they just have no energy to get through the day. They either hit that 10 a.m. slump or that 3 p.m. slump, or they're falling asleep on the couch in front of the TV at 8 p.m., or maybe all three of the above. Um, because protein takes longer to digest, it helps to keep our blood sugar levels stable. So, let's say you were to eat a candy bar right now. Right after eating that candy bar, your blood sugar is going to spike really high and you're going to feel that sugar high, right? You're going to have a lot of energy, but it's going to drop very quickly. We see this in our kids, especially a couple months ago on Halloween, I'm sure. It's going to drop very, very quickly, and we're going to crash, just like our kids do. Our energy levels are going to crash. Okay. But protein is not going to do that to our bodies. Protein is going to help keep that blood sugar stable, which is going to help maintain your energy throughout the day. Now, you're probably wondering, how much protein should I be eating? And what I'm going to tell you is going to sound like a lot. You should aim for about 30 grams per meal. Okay. And I'm not going to tell you that that's an easy thing to do, but once you start doing it and you figure out ways to increase your protein intake, it becomes a lot easier. So I put some foods up here, some, typical foods that we think of when we think of protein. A lot of people think of eggs. Now, eggs are a little bit tricky because if you see here, three eggs, each egg has about 6 grams of protein. And eating three eggs is quite a lot. And that's only getting you 18 grams of protein. So if you're having that for breakfast, and, eggs to me are incredibly filling. Um, and that's due to the fat content and the protein content. So you would need to add something to your three eggs, maybe a couple of, turkey sausage links, breakfast sausage links. And maybe that's too much then, right? It keeps you too full. So be careful with the eggs. Don't rely on eggs as your only source of protein for breakfast. Okay. There are other options out there. 4 ounces of chicken breast has about 25 grams of protein. So 4 ounces is about the size of your palm, or about like a little bit bigger than like a deck of cards would be a 4 ounce chicken breast. So that's why a lot of people do eat a lot of chicken when they're trying to increase their protein, but you absolutely do not have to eat a ton of chicken. It doesn't have to be a chicken and broccoli diet. I personally am not a huge fan of chicken. So will have chicken probably once a week. But there are a lot of other protein options out there. And if you feel like you're not sure, outside of these four things that I've listed here, drop the word protein in the chat and I have a lot of protein resources. So I'll send you some information about protein and, quick, easy ways to get protein into your diet. Cottage cheese, a cup of cottage cheese has about 25 grams. I know not everybody likes cottage cheese, but what you can do is you can blend your cottage cheese to get rid of that texture, because usually it's the texture that people don't like. And then you can make your own Alfredo marinara sauce if you're having pasta, say. Um, Blend some cottage cheese, throw it in with your marinara sauce, pour that on top of your whole grain pasta, and you're going to have a much more protein rich pasta dish, because typically pasta doesn't have much protein, by doing this. And it's going to taste cheesy. It's going to taste good. There's a lot of things you can do with blended cottage cheese. So just Google blended cottage cheese recipes and you're going to find a lot out there. So if you're somebody who doesn't like the texture of it, this might be the key for you. Also, a cup of Greek yogurt has about 25 grams of protein. Greek yogurt is another savior of mine because, like, again, like I'm not a huge fan of chicken. I don't like eating meat all the time. So Greek yogurt is super, super helpful. You can use it in place of sour cream. You can use it in place of mayonnaise. You can make it taste like dessert. So much you can do with it. And then, of course, protein bars are also always an option. I know some people think that they should stay away from that. But if you're struggling to get your protein intake in, eat a protein bar, or make a protein shake or a smoothie with some protein powder. It's absolutely okay to do that. You don't want to rely on that and only have those as your protein sources. But I have a protein bar every single day because it helps me hit my protein goal. So it's absolutely okay to do that. All right. So next thing that we want to focus on is fiber. Okay. So fiber has some of the same benefits as protein does. So it also takes longer to digest. So it helps keep you feeling fuller for longer. And it also helps to kind of keep your blood sugar stabilized. Because it improves your insulin sensitivity. So earlier we saw that the changes in our fat cells cause insulin resistance, and increases in visceral fat also increase insulin resistance. Fiber is going to help combat that. So this is a really, really big one for specifically visceral fat. It'll help with subcutaneous fat too, but this is a biggie for that visceral fat that you're dealing with, making sure you're getting in enough fiber. So not only does it improve that insulin sensitivity, it also reduces inflammation in the body. Okay, which is what we want to happen. We don't want that inflammation, and it supports our gut health. It allows us to stay regular. So a lot of great benefits, but that doesn't mean that you have to be a vegetarian. Okay, so I put an example of what I call a plant forward plate. And this is how I recommend all my clients fill their plates for their meals. Okay. You want half your plate to be your fruits and your veggies. Okay. Fruits and veggies have fiber in them. Some have more than others. So your fruits that have the most fiber are typically apples, pears, raspberries have a ton of fiber. Same thing with veggies. Your broccoli and Brussels sprouts are the two that have the most fiber. But all fruits and veggies are going to have some fiber in them because they come straight from the ground. And anything that is as close to coming from the ground as possible is going to be the most healthy for you. So filling half your plate with veggies and fruit, filling a quarter of your plate with your protein. And I always recommend eating your protein and your veggies first. Eat that part first. They fill you up, and then you have less room for other foods, right? And then the last quarter of your plate, you want that to be your carbohydrates. But with your carbohydrates, again, the closer they are to their natural form, the more fiber they're going to have. Okay. As foods get processed, they lose fiber. So if you were to grab a box of whole grain pasta and a box of just regular white pasta, you're going to notice that the whole grain pasta has a lot more fiber in it. And that's going to be a lot healthier for you and will help you reach your fiber goal, which, by the way, is 25 grams or more per day. Okay, 25 grams of fiber per day, at least, at the very minimum. Um, so with your carbohydrates, things that are not processed as much are going to be better for you. Any of your carbohydrates that come in packages, like your potato chips, your muffins, those are what we call our more simple carbs. And those are the ones that, like I said earlier, if you ate a candy bar right now, will spike your blood sugar and then cause it to drop. Your complex carbohydrates, so those are going to be your carbohydrates that have fiber in them. They are going to help keep your blood sugar stable. So you're not going to get that big spike and drop. Okay. Plus, they have fiber in them. So carbohydrates often get a bad rap. And certain carbohydrates absolutely should. Okay, like the candy bars and the potato chips. Those really have no health value. But our complex carbohydrates are necessary. We need to eat carbohydrates. And in fact, our brains only use carbohydrates for fuel. So, if you've ever been on a keto diet or a low carb diet and you felt like your brain was a little foggy, it's probably because your brain was not getting the fuel that it needed to function. Our brains cannot use protein and our brains cannot use fats as fuel. They need carbohydrates. So, um, carbohydrates are not inherently bad. We just want to be careful about which ones we are choosing. And then the last part of your plate is going to be a small portion of a healthy fat. Again, fats are not bad. Our bodies need fat. So that low fat diet, I remember eating those wow potato chips with the Olestra in them because they had no fat, and that was supposed to be so much better for me than whatever crap they put in them. Um, we need fat. Our bodies, our hormones especially need fat. If you were to use olive oil to cook your protein source, that could be your portion of a healthy fat. Okay. Or if you used olive oil and vinegar dressing on your salad full of your veggies, that could be your healthy fat. So this is what I would love all of your plates to look like, or as close to this as possible. And this is very helpful to kind of visualize and if take a screenshot of it if you want, especially when um, you're going out to dinner or you like, for example, Thanksgiving, right? I told all of my clients that this is when they plate their food for Thanksgiving, this is what you want to do with your plate, okay, to ensure that you have a healthy, well-balanced meal. All right. All right. And then finally, the last two pieces, they're not going to have their own slides, but they're just as important. Sleep and stress. Okay. So we need to focus on all five of these things at the same time in order to get the best results. Okay. These five interventions work best when they are focused together and not in isolation. So with your sleep, um, the menopause transition causes a lot of issues with sleep. Either it's that waking up at 2 to 3 a.m. and then not being able to fall back asleep, or waking up because you're having a hot flash or you're covered in sweat, right? Our sleep really gets disrupted during this time. So focusing on ways to improve your sleep is going to be incredibly beneficial to losing that menopause belly and just weight in general. So ideally, the goal is to get 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep. There's a lot of things that you can try to do to help your sleep. A lot of natural things such as creating a bedtime routine. I know when my kids were little, we had a routine set up for them so that as they were going through the steps of the routine, their body would understand, okay, I'm slowing down, I'm getting ready for bed because that's what's coming next. We can do that for ourselves too. Um, Ensuring that we are sleeping in a room that is cool and dark and quiet is going to be incredibly helpful. Um, Meditating before bed to get your body to calm down is helpful. Keeping screens away for the hour before bedtime is helpful. Going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time each day is helpful. Um, and then there are also other non-natural interventions that you can try to, talking with your doctor. And we're going to talk a little bit about hormone replacement therapy in a second here too, which could help with your sleep. And then also stress management. So, stress does play a role in our weight loss because stress causes our bodies to be inundated with cortisol, and cortisol causes inflammation. So, the more stress we have, the more inflammation we have in our bodies, and we want to reduce that inflammation. So, with stress management, everybody is different. So maybe it's talking to a therapist, maybe it's meditating, maybe it's doing yoga, maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's, taking time, for yourself to do something that you love once a week. You need to figure out what works best for you. So once you figure out how you can best manage your stress, and the key word here is manage. Like our stress is not going to go away. We're always going to have stress. It's how we deal with it that affects our body. So the better able we are to deal with our stress, the healthier our bodies will be and the less inflammation that we'll have. Okay, so again, that's kind of something you have to figure out on your own what's going to work best for you. All right. So, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit about hormone replacement therapy. Um, for years, for the past 20 some years, there has been a black box warning on HRT. And so it's scared a lot of women away from trying it to help with their menopause symptoms. However, just within the past, I think it was maybe like 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, they removed that black box warning. And there have been so many studies done that have proven many health benefits to HRT. So if that's something that you've ever thought about, definitely talk to your doctor about it. See, what their viewpoint on it is and educate yourself. But just a couple of points I wanted to make is that it doesn't cause weight gain, but it also doesn't cause weight loss. Okay, so some people go on HRT thinking that they're going to lose weight. Um, and They're not. That's not what it's for. It's for replacing your hormones, and it's not going to cause us to lose weight. Focusing on those other five things will. This will help with a lot, but not with weight loss. It can improve your sleep. It can improve your energy. It also helps with that insulin sensitivity. And then it supports our hormonal needs. So, like we talked before, our hormones are kind of going all out of whack when we're in perimenopause, and completely changing once we're in menopause. And so replacing those hormones can help our bodies kind of go back to that homeostasis, that we were in prior to, between puberty and hitting menopause, that homeostasis in there, where our hormones were at predictable levels. HRT can help us get back to that. Okay. All right. So we've talked about what does work. Let's talk really quick about what doesn't work. Extreme restriction. So by that, I mean eating very few calories. So if you are eating less than 1,200 calories and you're over 5 feet tall, you probably need more calories. Okay. Eating in a severe or large calorie deficit actually accelerates muscle loss. Okay. When we are not fueling our bodies with the energy that they need that comes from the calories, our bodies are then going to start using our muscle and kind of eating up our muscle, which means we're losing more muscle, which then causes our metabolism to slow down. We're burning fewer calories throughout the day. And if we want to continue to lose weight, we have to keep eating less and less and less. So going on an extreme restricted diet is going to backfire. Okay. And it's also not sustainable. So that's not going to help you lose weight. Okay. Our bodies need the fuel. Okay? Our bodies do a lot of amazing things all day long just to keep us alive. So we need to ensure that we're giving our bodies the fuel that they need. Like I mentioned before, cardio only programs aren't going to help. Okay. We're not getting that muscle building benefit. And if we're doing too much cardio, we could also be losing muscle due to that as well. So, yes, we need cardio for heart health, but we need that muscle building that comes from strength training for losing weight and getting rid of that visceral fat. Generic programs, generic diets aren't going to work either. Like I said earlier, what worked for you in your 20s, going on some, generic diet isn't going to help you now. Okay. It's not going to be as efficient because those generic programs and diets just ignore what's going on with your hormones. And that needs to, we need to focus on our hormones to help us reach our goals. And then also shaming yourself is not going to work. That's actually just going to increase your stress, which will increase your cortisol, which will worsen your belly fat. So don't berate yourself, don't shame yourself. You didn't do anything wrong. Like we said before, it's biology. And now that you know the steps you can take to counteract what's happening in your body naturally, now you can put in some work and make a change, but shaming yourself and looking down upon yourself is not going to help anybody. All right. So just to reiterate, it is not your fault. It is predictable physiology. It's not a moral failing. It's not a I've been so lazy. None of that. Okay. And hopefully, after listening to this, you are able to understand your body a little bit better and understand kind of what's going on, um, because that will allow you to have more consistent results. Because now that you know what to do consistently and you know that you only have to focus on five interventions, um, that can really help your body in many ways, not just to lose weight, not just to look better in your clothes, but to improve your health. That will get you more consistent results. And if you are a mantra type person, or if you want to become a mantra type person, here is a mantra that I would love for you to say to yourself at least once a day, preferably several times a day. I will work with my body, not against it. Okay. By doing all these things over here, you are working against your body and you're just making it harder. Okay. But focusing on strength training, protein, fiber, sleep, and stress management, that's working with your body. Okay. So our bodies do a lot for us. Okay? We need to show them love. We need to work with them and not cause more stress by working against them. Okay. All right. So the bottom line, menopause belly is biology, and your solution is to build some muscle, eat 30 grams of protein at every meal, eat 25 grams of fiber per day, improve your sleep if necessary, and work on stress management. And if you work on those 5 things, you will see changes in that menopause belly and improvements in your health. All right, let me stop this here and ask questions. See if there's any questions out there. Let me find the chat. Okay. Sharon left early. Okay. All right. Well, I thank you for joining me. I know you came in a couple of minutes after I had started, so I will be sending out the recording. So I'll send that to you, Jennifer, and so that you can watch those first couple of minutes. I don't think you missed anything very important. Um, but other than that, I hope you have a fabulous rest of your evening. Look at that, 7 p.m. on the dot. That was my goal. So, thank you for joining me and have a wonderful rest of your night, and I'll talk to you soon.